Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's black and white competition. It's February 5th on 2021. Before we get started with the competition, let me go through a few announcements. We do have some competitions coming up. Next week, on the 12th of February, we have our B competition for basically beginner photographers, students, whatever. The deadline for that was February 3rd, so if you haven't submitted entries, it's too late, but we certainly welcome you to join in and listen to the judges' comments. We also have a photojournalism night on February 26th. The deadline for that is the 24th, Wednesday before. And then the creative competition is March 5th, and the deadline for that is February 24th. We do have a speaker coming up on the 19th. It's a members-only Zoom presentation. We have Brent Paul, who leads wildlife safaris in the American West, so I'm sure he'll be showing a lot of his work from those safaris. And we also have a field trip coming up. It's really more of a photo opportunity. It's the Medina Ice Festival, and it's held Saturday the 20th and Sunday the 21st at Medina Public Square. It is free to the public, and since it's a weekend event, we're not necessarily meeting as a group, but we wanted to make sure you were aware that this event is taking place. So it'd be a good opportunity to get some nice winter shots. And again, we encourage you to watch this and all Friday evening meetings at your convenience on the CPS YouTube channel. There's a link on the CPS website homepage, or you can open YouTube and search for Cleve Photographic. And we invite you to subscribe to our channel so you can choose to be notified whenever a new video is posted. I will say, though, that our Zoom meetings are typically, when we have an outside speaker, they require that they be members only, so we do not post them on YouTube. We will be making them available at some point in the future. So again, welcome. This is our third black and white competition for the 2020-2021 year. Tonight we have 120 images, 76 in the black and white category, and 44 pictorial. And so we'd like to introduce you to our judges for the evening. Our first judge is Herb Ascherman. He's one of Cleveland's preeminent black and white portrait photographers. He works with an 8x10 view camera and film, printing his subjects in the resurgent art of handmade platinum. In addition to his work as an historian, writer, and editor, Asherman is the founder and director of the Cleveland Photographic Workshop and a sponsor of the 2021 Cleveland Photo Fest. Our second judge is Bill Helsel. Bill majored in architecture in college, and that led to a freelance career with an emphasis on architecture and travel stock photography. He has now retired from shooting assignments, but still teaches photography in an adult education program. He's currently concentrating on his personal fine art work, which has been exhibited in several locations in the San Francisco Bay Area. While his color work is digital, he still shoots most of his black and white work on film and makes his own prints in a wet darkroom. About 20 years ago, Bill began shooting landscapes with black and white infrared film and fell in love with its creative possibilities and is still shooting with it today. And you can see examples of his work along with an introduction to black and white infrared film and digital at www.billhelsel.com. And our final judge is Ed Shrider. After serving 5 years in the Navy, he attended Ohio University in 1977 and received a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in 1981 under Arnold Gasson, Lois Gruberger, and Dan Williams in the Department of Photography. His photographic concerns include the documentation of industrial, urban, and natural landscapes and abstract subjects. Photographers who have influenced his work include Aaron Siskind, Harry Callahan, William Eggleston, Len Gensel, and Stephen Shore. His current interests include small, medium, and large format film and digital image capture, along with traditional and digital intermediate processes and materials. He strives to produce printed images that are at least an equivalent of traditional black and white and color continuous tone photographs. Also provides digital printmaking services to artists, providing reproductions of fine art and photographic prints and editions. Artistically, Ed believes working toward complete command of a process or tool is part of the journey in realizing one's vision and should not necessarily be an end in itself. He feels that the most exciting work is that which is strong conceptually, with compelling content and minimal market compromises, work that is both visually and intellectually stimulating. So those are our three judges for tonight. The comments from the judges will be read by three of our members, Mike Smith, Dave Ciborek, and Bill Keaton. And I'm not sure who's reading which, but we'll find out once we get going here. The judging criteria. So if you're new to the competitions, each judge will score an image on a scale of 5 to 9. The final score for each image is the total of all three judges' scores. Images are judged on 3 criteria: impact, composition, and technique. All right, so for tonight, we're going to begin with our black and white images, and let's get started.
Herb says, the impact of this photo comes from its perceived size. The drama of this photograph would have been greatly improved by showing the context in which the face was painted.
The image is called Third Eye by Jim Rowe, 20 points.
Ed's comment, cluttered and not very compelling foreground with a prosaic background scene. Not sure what the photographer was attempting to convey, except just maybe this was a sunny, but apparently very cold day on the lake.
The image is called A Frozen Sheffield Lake by Fran Marino, 16 points.
It's a nice, quiet comment on the pandemic, Bill says. A guy escaping into the woods with his dog, which appears a bit suspicious to the photographer. But, of course, his wearing a mask says he's not alone and also blocks most of his face. The posing seems a bit awkward, and the hiking pole is trying to lead the eye out of the bottom of the image. Otherwise, man and dog are well placed in the frame.
The image is entitled A Man and His Dog by Belinda Prinz, 20 points.
The power of this portrait is drawn from the light, the look and the emotion of the man pictured. The portrait is enhanced mightily by the sepia tone, in which in effect gives me the subject a tonal value close to his real skin tone. This portrait is framed off-center for dramatic effect, adding to the overall visual appeal of the image.
The image is called Agony of Defeat by Darla Zajac, 24 points, second place.
Ed's comment, nice time-lapse photo with strong central subject anchoring the image. Good exposure with no blown-out highlights and detail in the shadow areas. Particularly like the aircraft trails in the sky intersecting the lighthouse.
The image is entitled Airplane Flyover Biloxi Lighthouse by Kathy Amari, 25 points, first place.
Bill says this is a lovely, fanciful, old-timey image with great atmosphere, composition, and lighting. The shapes of the shoes, stand, and lantern are well balanced and beautifully modeled by the side light, while the dark but still textured background separates them really well.
The image is called Baby Shoes by Glenn Petranek, 24 points, second place.
Herb says, a found imagery offers a subject matter to the inquiring eye. The commonplace is made extraordinary by the gaze of the photographer.
The image is called Boxes and Pewter by Vicky Wirt, 23 points, third place.
Ed's comment. Nice people / person subject. Could possibly be improved with cropping or further cropping and the use of a wider f-stop at time of capture to render the distracting background more out of focus.
The image is entitled Brothers by Richard Ader, 20 points.
This scene suggests an interesting story, Bill says, but leaves you to guess why all these luxury lots are there. It has no real center of interest, but does include the bottoms of some dramatic swirling clouds at the top. Unfortunately, those clouds become a distraction, and I think cropping down to just above the lower bank of puffy clouds would improve the image. Also, resolution is not great. It appears this shot was cropped from a larger one or started with a very low pixel count. Finally, contrast in the boats, water, and rocks is a bit too high.
The image is called Busy Bay by Joe DiStefano, 19 points.
Herb states, I admire the strength of the image, but the enhanced high contrast is too distracting, as it overwhelms the delicacy of the ice, snow, and rocks detail.
The image is called Cedar Falls Snow by Sarah Zeitlow, 21 points.
Ed's comment. Appears to be on a pinhole camera image. Would like to see the church without the hedge in front blocking the view.
The image is called Church of the Covenant by Audrey Roble, 16 points.
Bill says, I think this image succeeds both as a statement about the strength and sharpness of a hawk's talons and aesthetically as soft textures punctuated by 3 hard black curving lines. Perhaps a slightly darker background would enhance the effect.
The image is entitled Claws by Joseph Miko, 24 points, second place.
Herb says, any scene in the subject of a photograph is the subject of a photograph if well seen. This image may be intensely personal or memorable as it is its location and meaning. However, the emotional content is lost on the viewer.
The image is entitled Cycling Dream by Kim Wasilewski, 18 points.
Ed says, the train cars in the foreground, as well as the sky cutting diagonally across the top of the picture, distract from the main subject, which is the dozer, and the material it is sitting on. Isolating just the machine against a darker background would have made a much tighter composition and more interesting photograph.
The image is called D9 Moving Ore by Gary Marriage, 18 points.
This image has me scratching my head a bit, Bill says. It's nicely composed, softened, and vignetted, effectively giving a sort of dreamlike or out-of-the-past look. As for meaning, I take it as a reminder that domestic terrorism is nothing new and is probably not going to stop anytime soon.
The image is called Day of Drama by Darla Zajac, 19 points.
The reflection of the egret adds to the overall interest and graphic design of this image. Cropping it down to the top of the water plants would better frame the bird and its reflection.
The image is called Dinner with an Egret, 24 points, second place.
Ed's comment. Good lighting for this subject, but the eye is slightly out of focus with the sharpest focus point just behind the eye. Very important in wildlife photography to have the eyes of the subject in focus. The newest digital camera technology includes face and eye recognition autofocus, which can go a long way for improving productivity, capturing well-focused images of people and wildlife.
The image is called Dragon by Dave Ciborek, 21 points.
Great visual elements here, Bill says. A strong, simple curve leading to a potent punctuation mark of airplanes, all popping out strongly against a black background. Everything is well placed in the frame, too, with no wasted space. It's a fine image.
The image is entitled Flying High by Joe DiStefano, 25 points, first place.
Herb says, the viewer's eye is drawn to the lightest element in the photograph. The light side of the couch is very distracting to the portrait. Cropping underneath her left elbow would enhance the power of the portrait, which is otherwise well seen.
The image is entitled 40s Glamour by Jackie Sieski, 25 points, first place.
Ed's comment. Very nice winter scene with adequate shadow detail, but highlight on the far side of the bridge is slightly blown out. Use of burn tool in Photoshop could have resulted in highlight reduction in this area. For some reason, the composition seems a bit off. Maybe adjusting positions could have resulted in a stronger image.
The image is entitled Frozen in White by Sarah Zeitlow, 22 points, honorable mention.
Bill says, I find this image mysterious and alluring, maybe reminiscent of the intro to an older James Bond movie. Strong, simple dark shapes really pop against a nicely gradated background, and there's a subtle lower left to upper right diagonal leading the eye through it. It might be worth considering a slight crop on the left side to make that diagonal even stronger.
The image is entitled Girl in Hoops 2, black and white, 24 points, second place. It's by Ronald Wilson.
Herb states, this portrait needs to be defined. The fact that she is pictured as an oddity, a single subject isolated against a blank wall, says nothing about her personality, environment, or the context in which she functions.
The image is entitled Golden Rings by Bill Keaton, 24 points, second place.
Ed's comment. Professionally captured image of a stage scene with soft lighting which enhanced skin values and while providing adequate shadow detail.
The image is called Goldilocks and the Big Bad Wolf by Susan Bestel, 24 points, second place.
Ed says this image is a fine exercise in simplicity, overlapping shapes and lines, and contrasting gray tones. But it feels a bit diluted by all the empty space on the left and right. Consider cropping both sides a bit, but more on the left.
The image is called Half Empty or Half Full by Serena Cernick, 22 points, honorable mention.
Herb says, the large white area mid-frame detracts from whatever emotion the photographer was attempting to capture with her face and pose. The viewer can relate to the visual juxtaposition of the subject, but is distracted by the lack of a balanced tonal range.
The image is entitled In Darkness by Jackie Sieski, 22 points, honorable mention.
Ed's comment. Interesting composition through the foreground fog distracts a bit from the focus of the photograph. Possibly waiting until the haze lifts or tightening the composition may have made for a stronger image compositionally.
The image is entitled Industrial Silos by Mike Kopkas, 17 points.
Bill says this is what I call a what is it photo. The graphically textured field of shiny shapes against a dark background is visually strong, even without any sense of overall organization, although the larger sections of dark background near the bottom take on shapes of their own. And they're all reflecting the same apparent building parts, but I cannot escape wondering exactly what the subject is. If the photographer's goal is to keep us guessing, he or she has succeeded.
The image is entitled Infinity Mirror Globes by Nancy Kukelik, 21 points.
Herb states, the world in a drop of dew, or in this case, a dandelion. Well conceived, well seen, well executed. Well done.
The image is called Inside a Dandelion by Donna Schneider, 24 points, second place.
Ed's comment. Interesting pattern of old typewriter keys with composition made looking from an angle and not head on. Good lighting and shadow detail.
The image is called Key Soldiers by Bonnie Luxo, 20 points.
Bill says foggy days are great for atmospheric photos, and this one has plenty of atmosphere. But the composition feels a bit haphazard. My eye is equally drawn to the mausoleum and the end of the path on the right. Also, the bright sky is a bit distracting compared to the darker foreground. I'd suggest cropping the left just past the vertical monument to lessen the sky area and move the mausoleum entrance a bit more off center, and in processing, darkening the sky a bit and lightening the dark areas in the foreground.
The image is called Lakeview Crypt with Fog by Ron Werman, 20 points.
A commonplace compositional subject which carries no emotional subtext, says Herb. Whatever the photographer's thoughts other than purely architectural are not evident to the viewer. The white pieces in the background are visually distracted and perhaps would be stronger compositional elements if placed closer to the pond.
The image is called Last Man Standing by Tom Bognar, 19 points.
Ed's comment. Subject matter leaves a bit to be desired. Unsure what the photographer's intentions were, except possibly showing foreground and background separation via sharp focus.
The image is called Laundry Cart Wheel by Leslie Nutt, 16 points.
This is a very graphic image that has me wondering what I'm looking at, Bill says. Maybe that's the head of a Chinese serpent at the bottom and the all-seeing eye of the rare leather flower above. The image shows fine use of light and shadow to define its subject. However, I'm a bit uncomfortable with the near equal weight of the upper and lower shapes. Consider the cropping the bottom up to just below what appears to be an eye to allow the upper shape to dominate. Alternately, it may work to crop the top down to just above the upper eye, therefore emphasizing the lower shape more and making both eyes stronger. In any case, the photographer gets high marks for mystery with this image.
The image is entitled Leather Reflection by Mike Kopkas, 20 points.
Herb looks at this and says, by stepping about a foot to the right, the uneven and distractive line of the window pane would have been straightened, the lighthouse better framed in the center of the right quadrant, and the overall image better composed.
The image is called Lighthouse Through the Window by Kathy Amari, 20 points.
Ed's comment. Interesting foreground and background, but would have liked the image better without the chain link fence. Tough to shoot through a fence like this. The tonal qualities are interesting and appropriate for the subject.
The image is called Molly Stark Sanatorium by Dennis Wirt, 18 points.
Bill says nice light from both front and rear defines this statue and emphasizes the hands and rosary. It might benefit from having the background even more out of focus and from darkening the distracting sky in the upper right.
The image is called Morning Woman by Anthony Warmuth, 20 points.
Herb says, the image needs a little more contrast to make the roots more dramatic and impressive. Cropping up from the bottom, maybe about an inch on my screen, would tighten the composition.
The image is called Octopus Tree by Jane Sidney, 20 points.
Ed's comment. High quality photograph of the full moon. High quality astrophotograph of the full moon. Tonal qualities are good. Printed on high quality matte or glossy paper at a high resolution should render a high quality print.
The image is entitled Our Moon by David Burns, 20 points.
This beautifully sharp and textured pelican stands out well against the dark background, Bill says. The reflection is nice too, and I think the image could have been made stronger by including more of it, assuming that was possible. The reflection would add a repetition of shape or supporting cast to the bird and make the image feel more like a considered composition and not just a tightly framed portrait.
The image is entitled Pelicanus Occidentalis by Dave Ciborek, 25 points, first place.
Bright, detailed, and dramatic composition. The image would be stronger if half the dark area on the right side of the frame were cropped in, says Herb.
The image is called Peruvian Lily by Joseph Miko, 22 points, honorable mention.
Ed's comment. Nice portrait photograph. Particularly like the sepia tone of the image. Composition fills the frame and the background has been rendered out of focus and darkened. Overall, a very good photograph.
The image is called Pirate in Mischief by Bill Keaton, 24 points, second place.
Bill says the challenge of a cloudy day is dealing with the sky. As the brightest thing in this image, it attracts the eye but doesn't reward it with anything interesting. This image has a lot of nice texture, a good tonal range, and a decent sense of composition. Some sky helps by defining several tree shapes near the top, but consider cropping off a little at the bottom to lessen the sky's distraction. If you revisit this pond on a cloudy day, consider leaving out the sky altogether and filling more of the frame with the reflection.
The image is called Plum Creek in Infrared by Eric Wethington, 22 points, honorable mention.
Herb says that dogs are always a great subject in natural composition. The image would be a lot stronger if the gray in the couch behind the dog's head was not so overpowering.
The image is called Pointer Sisters by Gary Marich, 19 points.
Ed's comment. A difficult image due to the extreme contrast. Would have liked to see just a bit of detail in the blackest blacks, as well as in the highlight area looking out the window. Possibly shooting bracketed shots per HDR would have allowed Photoshop tools to be used in order to recover image detail.
The image is called Quiet Ride by Rick Carroll, 22 points, honorable mention.
This is a lovely gesture, Bill said, dramatically lit and well composed against a contrasting dark background. After the face, my eye goes to the near shoulder, which, because it's relatively light and large, distracts a bit from the important hand. Consider darkening the shoulder and lightening the hand and arm just a bit.
The image is called Rebecca's Beauty by Fran Marino, 22 points, honorable mention.
A cute shot. Nobody doesn't like squirrels, especially with biscuits and gravy. That's my ad lib, by the way. Herb says, crop in from the left at least halfway to the wooden post. The open and dead space adds nothing to the composition.
The image is called Red Squirrel, Black and White by Wayne Fierstein, 22 points, honorable mention.
Ed's comment. Nice wildlife image with great tonal range. The background has been rendered dark, so the main focus is on the subject. Focus is tack sharp, particularly at the eye. A little less headroom to tighten the composition would strengthen the image. A photograph worthy of a high-quality print.
The image is called Scrutinizing Raptor by Belinda Prinz, 23 points, third place.
Bill says this is a fine portrait of a gull in flight, its wings caught in an attractive position and composed to give it space to fly into on the left. To improve the composition in future photos of birds in flight, try to include one or more other elements, other birds, strong clouds, a bit of landscape, something to act as a context or counterpoint or supporting cast.
The image is called Seabird by Maria Diaconu, 21 points.
Herb's comment. Well seen, well composed, well lit, and well balanced. The face carries an emotional content which engages the viewer.
The image is called Severance Fountain by Glenn Petranek, 20 points.
Ed's comment. Image displays carefully controlled lighting and subsequent exposure which enhances the difficult to render glass subjects. I particularly like the tonal range of the image without blown out highlights or blocked blacks.
The image is called Shades of Glass by Serena Cernick, 20 points.
Bill says this is a fine little slice of nostalgia. It's well lit and organized, with the lamp and its shadow clearly the center of interest, and everything else a supporting cast. Interesting all the way out to the edges and corners. A diagonal line carries the eye easily back and forth through the frame. One small suggestion. At the bottom of the frame and along the left edge, there are a few very small but slightly distracting white spots. Removing them would subtly strengthen the image.
The image is called Solitary Train Ride by Kim Wasilewski, 21 points.
Herb states, the intent of the image is lost on the viewer. As an advertising exercise, it would have been more powerful if both shoes were in sharp focus.
The image is called Step on a Crack by Leslie Nutt, 18 points.
Ed's comment. Unsure what the intent of this image is, other than to show rough surface in direct sunlight conditions. Possibly a better photograph could have been made showing frontal composition of the wall surface in overcast conditions.
The image is called Stone Wall by John Dunleavy, 16 points.
Bill says this is a good job of catching the monkey's expression and framing it with the tree branch and leaves. Ideally, there would be less empty white sky between the monkey and the leaves of the left. If it had been shot on a sunny day with a blue sky, You could have darkened the sky a bit and that would have helped too.
The image is entitled The Scream by Cynthia Smith, 20 points.
Herb says, very dramatic, well seen, balanced, and captured in a striking composition. The top of the rock does need a little more tone, though.
The image is called Tricolor Heron in Black and White by Mike Lonsdale, 20 points.
Ed's comment. Finely rendered image with good dynamic range and tonal values. The composition follows the rule of thirds convention, which lends attention to the subject, unlike if it had been composed in the center of the frame. Worth the time and effort to make a fine print.
The image is called White Dahlia by Vicky Wirt, 23 points, third place.
This is a strong, simple abstract made from something most people wouldn't even notice, Bill says. The tonal values work well, especially at the bright upper right corner, popping out against the dark sky. The curve of the main near vertical line is a bit unexpected since I'd imagine that's a straight line in reality. It's an unconventional image that rewards the viewer with subtle details and textures if you look for a while.
The image is called Winter Beach House by Omar Jeffries, 21 points.
Herb states, the image is graphic, not photographic. It has the elements of contrast, design, and movement, yet is more suited to design than photography.
The image is called Barcode Casey number 3, Black and White by Ronald Wilson, 21 points.
Ed's comment. Nice image with a hint of detail in the background. However, foreground exposure is a bit dark. Would like to see a bit more detail in the black areas. Composition's a bit centered and thus static. Possibly positioning, spreading the subjects would have added tension to the subjects.
The image is entitled Bottles by Anthony Warmuth, 20 points.
Bill says this image has the look of having been taken with a pinhole or a cheap fisheye lens, both of which can yield good results with the right subject, but in this case don't show these buildings at their best. Perhaps including more of the curved retaining wall in the foreground would have made it a stronger counterpoint to the buildings.
The image is called Church of the Covenant Circle by Audrey Roble, 19 points.
Herb says, the image works as an exercise in design, but lacks any emotional content to make it otherwise interesting. The viewer is left with the question, why?
The image is called Coarse versus Fine by Tom Bognar, 19 points.
Ed's comment. Interesting natural image. However, foreground is slightly out of focus. Image could possibly be improved if camera was placed on tripod, allowing smaller f-stop and slower shutter speeds. An f16 or f22 aperture setting would likely render entire subject in focus. A shutter speed of 1/15th to 1/4 of a second would smooth the falling water without the milky look. Prudent dodging in Photoshop could bring out shadow detail in blocked shadow areas.
The image is called Converging Waterfalls by Franz Anheuser, 18 points.
Bill says this shot is well composed with an interesting subject, but lacks drama because of the flat light and uninteresting sky. Landscape photographers often visit a promising location several times before they get it in the best light. Consider revisiting this location again on a clear day near sunrise or sunset for strong texture and shadows, and of course, the water level should be similar to what we see here.
The image is called Florida Driftwood Beach by Nancy Kikelik, 19 points.
Herb says, yep, that's Cleveland all right. The sky, the water, the construction, and the ore boats are all necessary elements of the Cuyahoga composition.
The image is called Grain Silos in the Flats by Richard Ader, 21 points.
Ed's comment. Very nice image with sky and water detail. Composition with foreground grass. Offset provides a touch of tension to an overall image. Good exposure and tonal values.
The image is called Indigo Lake Reflection by Dennis Wirt, 22 points, honorable mention.
Bill says this looks like a grab shot of a tired Civil War reenactor taking a break. It conveys his feelings well, and the diagonal fence completes the composition, but he's too centered. Consider cropping the left side to about midway between the edge of the frame and his elbow.
The image is called Just Resting by John Dunleavy, 21 points.
Herb says, the relatively shallow depth of field is distracting. An image of this nature needs a sharp focus from front to back to keep the viewer's eye and attention.
The image is called Leaf in a Stream by Eric Wethington, 17 points.
Ed's comment. Interesting image. However, main subject appears to be slightly out of focus, possibly due to the autofocus setting is off center. Notice the foreground grass is in focus, which indicates focus setting is low center.
The image is called Number 9 at 3,800 feet by Jim Rowe, 18 points.
Bill says this is a lovely, moody, high-key image that makes good use of the reflection in the stream. The diagonal lead-in from the lower right gently guides the eye into the distance, past the fallen branch, and off into the misty infinity. Consider a slight darkening of the left edge and, especially, the lower left corner to frame the image more effectively and lessen the distracting effect of the bright snow on the left edge.
The image is called North Branch by Rick Carroll, 21 points.
Herb says, this is certainly a majestic image that is well conceived, but by the same token, it needs more sky and space around the peak to really breathe with emotion.
Breathe with
Breathe?
emotion.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Breathe with emotion.
The image is called North Cascades National Park by Mike Lonsdale, 19 points.
Ed's comment. Very nice stage photograph. Composition could have been strengthened if image was cropped to make it more horizontally oriented, losing the upper and lower dark areas. Would like to see a bit more detail in the shadow areas.
The image is called Provocativo by Susan Bestel, 22 points, honorable mention.
Bill says this is a pleasant, well-lit portrait of some famous faces. The layers of dark trees at the bottom and sky at the top help to divide the image into several horizontal bands, making it more interesting. If you're ever there again, consider more dramatic light, perhaps the sun raking across from the further left to give more shadows and highlights on the cliff face, and also maybe more context, something to lift this from a portrait to a landscape.
The image is entitled Rushmore by Maria Diaconu, 19 points.
Herb's comment. Perfect shot. The backlighting and tonal range are marvelous, as is the general composition of the entire image.
The image is called Soaring by Cynthia Smith, 22 points, honorable mention. Oops, sorry.
Ed's comment. Nice image of staircase balusters. Good exposure and tonal range. If camera was placed on tripod, possibly a bit more depth of field could be obtained using f/16 or f/22. So most of the foreground balusters would be in sharp focus.
The image is called Stepping Up by Bonnie Luxo, 18 points.
This image, with its cloudy daylight and dramatic clouds, conveys the roughness of this scene well, Bill said. It feels cold and gloomy, and the water appearing to rush out from beneath the buildings is unexpected and a little unsettling. Good use of a wide lens emphasizing the water, and good depth of field and tonal quality.
The image is called The Bunkhouse by Bob Kowaleski, 22 points, honorable mention.
Herb says, an interesting visual photographic, but lacking in drama of intensity. Unless the photographer had a particular connection to the buildings, the purpose of the image is elusive to the viewer.
The image is called Urban Patterns by Omar Jeffries, 21 points. And that concludes the black and white portion. We'll look at the pictorial images, and we are only commenting on those that were, where comments were requested. So I will read through these until we get to the comment images, or read the maker's name and the score. The first image, I Caramba by Susan Bestel, 25 points, first place. This image is entitled The Barrel Racer 2 by Ronald Wilson, 23 points, third place. This image is called Cascading Berries by Rick Carroll, 21 points. This image is called Chickadee by Wayne Fierstein, 21 points. Child's Delight by John Dunleavy, 16 points. Dashing Through the Snow by Barb Cerrito, 22 points, honorable mention. First Frost by David Burns, 22 points, honorable mention. Glacier by Jim Rowe, 19 points. Huntington Banking Hall by Dennis Wirt, 20 points. Lady Condor by Marge Brady, 24 points, second place. Moonlight on Crater Lake by Mike Lonsdale, 21 points. Moroccan Basket Weaver by Richard Ader, 23 points, third place. Nice Catch by Cynthia Smith, 20 points. Observatory Park by Anthony Warmuth, 17 points. Oriental Poppy by Nancy Kikelik, 18 points. PLT, RIP, and Ducklings, Audrey Roble, 18 points. Quietude by Bonnie Luxo, 18 points. Radiating Duck by Donna Schneider, 23 points, third place. Red Amaryllis by Maria Diaconu, 20 points. Red Columbine by Marge Brady, 24 points, second place. Through the Weeds by Fran Zanizer, 19 points. Upper Affelder Falls by Ron Werman, 23 points, third place. Upper Emerald Pool Zion by Bob Kowaleski, 20 points. Winter Sunset at Marblehead by Fran Zanizer, 24 points, second place. Wired Chairs by Jane Sidney, 20 points. All right, the remaining images, we will read the judges' comments.
It says, excuse me, good exposure and tonal range with interesting sky detail. Unsure of composition, though. A different camera could possibly provide a stronger image.
The image is called The Approaching Storm, Cuyahoga Valley by Dave Ciborek, 19 points.
Bill says this strikes me as a bright, happy photo fantasy in the vein of the Bizarro comic strip. Imaginative, colorful, with a strong off-center of interest, accentuated by the surrounding swirl of yellow and red tentacles. If you view it close up with eyes defocused, as you would view a stereogram, it becomes three-dimensional.
The image is called Argyle Swirl Refracted in Droplets by Ron Werman, 22 points, honorable mention.
Herb says, you got this one right. Beautifully seen, colored, and composed. The portrait is dripping with intensity. I'm sure this is one of his or her favorite portraits.
The image is called Bald Eagle Profile by Joseph Miko, 22 points, honorable mention.
Ed's comment. I like the muted colors in the composition. Exposure is spot on. Would like the image even better if there were no broken windows to interfere with what could be a pure architectural aesthetic without what could be considered social commentary.
The image is called Broken Windows by Jane Sidney, 21 points.
Bill says this is a fine dramatic portrait, skillfully lit from both sides, with the unusual quality that the hair dominates the face. It's well composed with effective use of a black background and subtle detail in dark clothing. I would be interested to see what it looks like with the face a bit brighter and the hair a little darker to shift emphasis more to the face.
The image is entitled Dressed in Fur by Jackie Sieski, 23 points, third place.
Herb states, in these days of plague, images like this can be the last keepsake of lifetime spent together. All we can do is wish them safety and good health.
The image is called He Held Her Hand for 66 Years Even As She Slipped Away by Fran Marino, 23 points, third place.
Ed's comment. Nice image, but composition is a bit static, with bridge running right through the middle of the frame. Maybe a different camera position would allow for a brighter composition without foreground distraction.
The image is called Interurban Bridge, built in 1907 by Serena Cernick, 19 points.
Bill says breaking the rule of thirds by putting a major horizontal line through the middle of an image can weaken it, but here it works fine. This photo is about the lovely early or late warm light on the trees one in particular and their soft reflections. The bright trees and reflections pop out dramatically against the dark sky and water. Consider cropping just a bit off the top to about midway between treetop and top of frame to intensify the image and bring that horizontal line just a bit more above center.
The image is called Last Light by Bill Keaton, 24 points, second place.
Herb says, the color and subject matter work well. The image would be enhanced by cropping the right side to the edge of the bright green leaf. The dead brown space detracts from the subject of the center leaf.
The image is called Last Remnants of Fall by Marge Brady, 21 points.
Ed's comment. Nice tight image with just a hint of compositional tension. Horizon is placed at proper height, allowing for foreground subject to be adequately covered.
The image is called Monhegan Island by David Burns, 18 points.
Bill says MC Escher might have been here. This is a well-composed, splendid fantasy of color, pattern, and lines. Lots for the eye to discover as you explore this image. The lighting is perhaps a bit unnaturally even, maybe to the use of HDR. Since this is architecture, having a whole scene leaning a bit to the left weakens it, so straightening the verticals is my only suggestion.
The image is called No Handrails by Glenn Petranek, 22 points, honorable mention.
Herb says, nice and bright, compositionally well seen. The sweep of the greenery adds to the strength of the image. The color balance between background and foreground work very well.
The image is called One Pink Flower by Darla Zajac, 19 points.
Ed's comment. Nicely exposed and focused image. Background is adequately out of focus, so the intended foreground subject is isolated well. May have cropped image top, left and right, in order to strengthen the composition.
The image is called Red-Tailed Hawk by Mike Kopkas, 19 points.
Bill says this is an excellent still life with effective low-key lighting and fine composition and color palette. The cascade of carrot stems is particularly nice. Warm and cool colors accent each other nicely. While we can see some texture in the background, brightening it a bit might improve the image.
The image is called Salad Bar by Vicky Wirt, 25 points, first place.
Herb states, nicely framed. The up angle of her face adds to the mystery of the portrait. By removing one of the two catch lights in each of her eyes, the viewer will be better able to focus on her face.
The image is called Self-Portrait by Leslie Nutt, 22 points, honorable mention.
Ed's comment. Nice image. It could have been improved. It could have been brightened a bit along with some judicious dodging and burning in Photoshop to improve impact of the scene. Looks like shadow highlighting tool in PS was used, but a bit more would work to make a stronger image.
The image is called Split Rock, Minnesota by Donna Schneider, 20 points.
Bill says the colorful sunrise or sunset fog separates the near and far layers of trees in a very nice way. The foreground is the least interesting part of the scene, so I suggest cropping the bottom up to the base of the bush on the right or a bit more. After that, consider darkening just the bottom of the foreground field a bit and slightly lightening the upper part so as to divide the foreground into two layers to add some interest to that area.
The image is called Sunset Vineyard by Gary Marich, 20 points.
Herb states, perfect moment, beautifully captured. Everything works in this image, from the composition to the color to the reflections on the water. Any adult would love this portrait of his child, as would any child love to have it hanging in his house.
The image is called The Last Drop of Summer by Sarah Zeitlow, 22 points, honorable mention.
Ed's comment. Nice subject and composition. Exposure and tonal range is good. Image could possibly be stronger if flowers were not spread out as much, allowing composition to be centered more around the metal vase.
The image is called Three in a Row by Kathy Amari, 22 points, honorable mention. And that concludes tonight's competition. For more information about competing, or if you'd like to join the Cleveland Photographic Society, if you're not already a member, please visit our website, clevelandphoto.org. We'd like to thank all of our judges, the judges that wrote the comments, and our members who read the comments. Appreciate your help. And we want to thank all who entered, and congratulations to our winners. We invite your feedback, so if you'd please give us some comments at info@clevelandphoto.org. So good night, everyone, and stay safe.